Inspiration, new miniatures, rules updates. There's a lot of stuff that's actually been announced recently, so I just kind of wanted to go all over that. I know I haven't updated a lot recently, sorry about that, but let's just jump into what's going on. Inspiration. This is a new mechanic that's used to track to help mitigate some lower party counts to help them unlock the same amount of personal quests as a larger party. So it's one of those things, every 15 scenarios you will usually complete a personal quest, give or take. I know some of them are considerably longer, and some of them actually end up being unlocked much quicker, especially if you get them immediately. However, they seem to average out roughly 12 to 15. So what we've done is every time you complete a scenario in Frosthaven, you get inspiration equal to 4 minus the number of characters that went into the dungeon. So this doesn't need to be the same every time. So if you have 4 players and you're like missing one a week, you might get one, and over the course of a campaign, you might end up getting 15 inspiration, and boom! Every time a character retires, you can spend 15 inspiration to complete a new personal quest by drawing 2 and getting, completing one of those. This doesn't actually help you complete quests faster. There's been some people saying, oh God, I've seen this one personal quest and every time I get it, I'm like, I don't like it. And 15 inspiration sounds way easier. It won't actually help you complete that. However, it does mean once you do complete that, you might actually be able to complete 2 personal quests instead. This does go off of the base that you'll be completing a personal quest every 15 scenarios. So it actually doesn't change much because some people are confused by the math. So if you go through 15 scenarios with 4 people, you'll supposedly going to complete 4 personal quests. But if you do it with 3, you'll complete 3, and 2, you'll complete 2. Leaving that, some people were completing the Gloomhaven campaign with 2 players and having so much of the box unlocked. And every time we've done a whole campaign, we've unlocked every class, including the X puzzle, -1 every time. With Forgotten Circles, we've always unlocked the final class. So it's one of those things that every run with a 4-player campaign, we're really good at unlocking the whole box. So that's cool. Unfortunately, with 3 or 2 players, it's way harder. So this actually averages it out. If we would have run the same campaigns with 2 players, it would work out. I honestly encourage anyone who's like starting Gloomhaven for the first time and wants to maybe experience the whole box to implement this inspiration special rule to kind of help them explore more of the box. It really doesn't change much beyond unlocking more of the miniatures for you while still actually completing the quests that you've been assigned. Speaking of unlocks, he did actually discuss that not all unlocks are done from personal quests. As a matter of fact, some are unlocked from buildings, like talking about the Hunter's Lodge and some of the others, which I won't go into detail because we'd like to make this as spoiler-free as possible. But it's actually, I personally love the fact, and I know a few of the buildings that do unlock it, but I think it's great that as your settlement develops, people will visit you and you unlock classes that way instead of just like, hey, I did this thing, now this guy joins our party. Hey, I did this thing. Instead of like, hey, I did this thing. Hey, we unlocked this part of the map and now we found a this. Hey, we did this complete quest chain as a group and now this guy joins our party. Hey, we built this building and we've attracted a this. There's just so much more variety in how you get people to join that I think Frosthaven does such a good job. And there was some discussion on like, hey, you know what? I actually heard some people complain that, you know what, there's already enough to track in Gloomhaven. Why are we tracking inspiration, all these resources? It's hard. And I'm going to be honest, outside of the scenario mode, the campaign mode of Gloomhaven had almost no tracking at all. Like you tracked prosperity and had a big deck of things that were like, here are your events, so draw the top 1, and here are the things like prosperity, and the shop is nothing really. Outside of, reputation, there's very little. I mean, coming from someone like me who's played a lot of Kingdom Death, there's absolutely no settlement management in Gloomhaven. It's not even in the same camp. One of them is completely huge and the other one's just lightweight. Frosthaven adds a little bit more of that with tech trees, building, and all these other fun stuff that really make the settlement part of it so much more involved. And not only that, it feels more rewarding. And as some of the people who are involved in the more campaign testing, it definitely has given it a much better experience. It also makes you feel more involved with the city you're supposedly trying to help, because a lot of people were like, after all this stuff that's going on in Gloomhaven, screw it, why are we helping them? And you definitely get more attached in Frosthaven, and I think that's a good thing. And this isn't to completely ignore the fact that we're actually going to have some pretty neat miniatures. I actually ran several demos for Frosthaven at Origins Game Convention this year, and it was huge to see the whole like 3D printed scenario that we had, but it was so great if we could actually have full miniatures, and now we have them. And not only that, but these miniatures are pretty universal, like bandits, bandit guards and bandit archers can be used in any D&D campaign. I've seen people try to convert some of these bloodlines to like Inox or Orchids to 5th edition D&D roles. So it's possible you can bring those over in the RPG campaign. And I know some people are like, hey, you know what, D&D doesn't have Orchids. Well, you know what? I was so obsessed with Hero Quest when I was younger, so long ago, that I added Femirs from that to 2nd edition D&D. I gave them stats and everything, and I painted the Hero Quest miniatures, and I'm like, boom, we have these. And they were overpowered because as you know, a 14-year-old, I had no idea how to balance anything. So that sucked, but I was able to use those miniatures. And now that I'm much older, I'm like, hey, we can use some of these, and they actually make me fun to run like a campaign like that. And ultimately, even if you don't want that, just the standees against miniatures just kind of is a little jarring. I'd love to use all miniatures sometime, and I think it'd be great. I actually got some 3D printed terrain, so I'm gonna hopefully have some like next level Gloomhaven and next level Frosthaven when Isaac sends me the box, which I'm super excited about. If you do play Gloomhaven Digital, some of the rules updates actually made it into digital as options, so you can check some of these and import them over, which is great because something like the new rolling modifiers rule is so critical that I think that honestly everyone should be playing that way. So the fact that you can now bring this into digital really makes that a lot better, because some people are like, hey, I'm gonna make a guide for what perks you need to pick for X class. Like, wait, are you using digital or the thing? Because we use this house rule bar, like, you know, screw it. You know what, the fact that you can say, hey, in digital, if I do play that way, boom, I've got a checkbox. If I'm playing on the board game, I can use this rule or that rule. Simply put. And when you're going into Frosthaven, there's only one rule. There's no house rules, there's no side rule, no checkbox. Frosthaven does have these rules. So these are things you're going to have to actually get used to going forward unless you ignore Isaac. But you know, Isaac also did say he will not come to your house and force you to play it the way he says. So they're not stopping you from using the old rules anyway. So I guess it's really up to you. But these are what the community as a whole will be playing Frosthaven going forward using those rules. So I think it's important to kind of almost I like the fact that Gloomhaven Digital has this option, because we're going to have to get used to it anyway, and I think people as a community are already moving in that direction. Last but not least, this is something that I thought was pretty cool, because when we shuffled in Satire's battle goals into ours, we're like, yay, this is cool, but then sometimes they're like, oh my god, these 2 battle goals are so hard for this class, and there's so many of them, it's hard to dig through them all. So guess what? Draw 3 and pick 1 instead of drawing 2. Pretty small change. However, in Frosthaven, with the expanded battle goals, thank you, Satire. You and your team are amazing, by the way. It's just so much more fun to have more options. Also, some of them are just a little more tough. So it's going to be really nice to see how people maybe will be a little bit more picky and choosy. Especially now that like these perks, the perk order for me is significantly harder to pick now. Because there seems to be a pretty easy, in my opinion, mathematical progression for most classes in Gloomhaven, and Frosthaven's perk design is notably harder to say that which one's objectively better than the other. So I'm really excited to see how more battle goal options will kind of improve and maybe like change reliability of people picking what battle goals they like, and giving people more options while also making people push for perks. And maybe we won't have these like guides where people just say, hey, pick this one card, hey, pick this one perk. I hate guides like that, and I like to just do an overview of saying, here's the class and here are the things that you should consider, because a lot of classes have more of a subjective approach anyway, and there's not necessarily the right way to play some classes. I know some of them are a little, you know, there's the Mind Thief, which has some pretty obvious picks, some pretty obvious good way to win play styles, and the perk order is pretty kind of set in stone. But there's significantly less than that. As a matter of fact, some of my favorite Frosthaven classes, a few I can't talk about, have perks where I'm like, I can't pick any time. They all seem so great, and I think that's just wonderful. So I'm super excited to hear this, that we can finally talk about some of these new rule changes, and I'm just excited for Frosthaven. I know it still seems so far away, and time passes so crazy nowadays, but trust me, I mean, my work on Frosthaven playtesting's done, things are moving along, and I really hope that people are still at least hyped about the game. I mean, I ultimately think it's a step up from Gloomhaven, and I know I'm the biggest Gloomhaven fangirl in the whole world. but I think Frosthaven's going to be better, and I hope everyone else is equally high. So, do you have any your own thoughts on inspiration, miniatures, or anything I discussed in the video? Let us know in the comments below. And remember, it really helps out if you drop a like. And I just want to thank all of our patrons. Thank you for sticking through this and supporting us. And thank all of you for watching.